Alrighty, let me go ahead and share my screen. There we go. All right, so if you're watching this, you're at watching the Self-Care is Not a Sham Rock workshop with me and Casey. We are currently academic success coaches. You can always make an appointment with us. And yeah, so let's get into some self-care tips and practices and just something to maybe help you get through this end of the semester and maybe start the next semester off well. So the 7 pillars of self-care. When I thought about this, idea of self-care, I was like, there's just so many different ways of going about it. And even when I think about self-care, I get a little bit overwhelmed. And so I was like, I wonder if there's kind of a structure, not even like tips or ideas, but just like a structure of maybe what certain ideas you should hit when you're doing self-care, what things you maybe could start off doing as kind of the building blocks of your self-care. So we have listed here that, the first pillar is knowledge and health literacy. The second is mental well-being, and we'll definitely get into that later. The third is physical activity. We all know that, those endorphins and having serotonin, really going well in your body makes a big difference in just how your day is going. Number 4 is healthy eating. I know I have definitely a problem with this when I'm a lot more stressed out. I tend to eat a lot poorer, and sometimes it's because I want that comfort, and other times it's just because it's convenient, and it's right there, and maybe there's a vending machine down the road, or I know if I just go through the drive-through, it'll be a lot faster than, cooking a meal. But it definitely will take a toll on not only, your gut health and your nutrition, but also your sleep. Eating unhealthy foods can, change your sleep patterns, especially if it's high in sugar. It can make it to where you really don't get good enough sleep, and we know that will really impact how you are the next day. So number 5 is risk avoidance. Obviously, when you're practicing self-care, you don't want to put anything in your body or do anything to your body that might be harmful. So, whether it's drugs and alcohol, doing maybe some risky activities, just make sure that you are fully thinking through your choices and figuring out what would work best for you. The 6th one is good hygiene. Taking a good bath or taking a shower when you just need a reset. Even if you're clean, you can always do it. It helps me sometimes. And then 7 is rational use of products and services. And that, kind of goes into the idea of maybe seeing a therapist, maybe seeing your school advisor or an academic success coach, reaching out to all those different resources that you have. So Casey, you have some stuff on this?
Yeah, so a big fault of mine is that like I'll see the 7 and like end up focusing on just 3 or 2 or 4 or 5 or 6. But I think it's really important to definitely do those like self checks to make sure that that I really am focusing on all 7 pillars, because like they all work towards greater good. So like if you neglect one and focus on the others, then something else is going to be falling short. So like always doing constant like self check-ins, which you'll talk about soon. That's something that I've learned to like constantly do in order to maintain that balance, because it really does help when you look at each thing individually but as a whole at the same time. So it's really important to make sure you're balancing all 7.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so Casey actually found this graphic and I love it. I think it really gives you an even more condensed version, of what we just went over. Kind of like Casey said, 7 is a lot of things to pay attention to. So you can even break it down into these types of categories of physical self-care, emotional self-care, social self-care, and spiritual self-care. And I'd like, you guys, when you're watching this video, to think about realistically what you do in each of these categories. And I think if you could name maybe 1 or 2 from each one, you've got a pretty good self-care regimen. And sometimes it just takes, rephrasing things. Self-care, even though we think about it as something that it's like, oh, you're doing it for yourself. Maybe we think of getting a massage, or, doing a facial. It's not always quite as easy as that. And it's not, frankly, always as fun as that. So, you just really have to think about it the best way you can to make the most sense of it and to figure out what works best for you. Yep. Perfect. All right, time and surroundings management. So I almost just put time management, but then I thought about the fact that, managing your surroundings plays a big role in even how you manage your time and how you're just kind of managing yourself. And time management definitely lends its hand to, if you're not doing it, you can very easily fall into feeling overwhelmed, feeling panicky, and that really is not the best practice of self-care. So, practicing time management is that sometimes self-care means planning ahead. So you really need to create a schedule and stick to it. If you've watched our last workshop on goal setting, you'll kind of remember we talked about, planning things ahead of time and kind of really visualizing what you want and what you want to do for the week or the day or the weekend, because, your time can slip away from you so quickly. So it is important, to include that relaxation time and to, not only think about the fact that you need to relax this weekend, but especially on one of the busier ones, schedule that time, because you do, deserve to have that time scheduled. And having this time management, like I said, helps you feel less overwhelmed. In terms of the surroundings, protecting your study time is very important. You have to learn to say no to those distractions and yes to the people who, when things get hard, will help you stay on task. I actually was just listening a couple weeks ago to a talk from a colleague of mine who wrote her dissertation, and she kind of told her family, like, look, I might be a little bit out of the picture for the next couple weeks or, next month or however long it's going to take me to write this. And she made it very clear that it didn't mean that she was cutting off connections with anybody. She kept the connections active in those moments that were helping her get through it. So maybe the people that are only there, to have a good time or to go out maybe aren't the right people when you're really, in the dense thick of the, the semester or in the, harder parts of a project. But definitely, keep around those people who can support you. And if you, can't pinpoint somebody that would be helpful, you always have your academic success coaches here that will be readily available for that support.
And I wanted to hop in, Emily, also to just kind of emphasize what you said about your friend. Definitely surrounding yourself with people who have similar goals to you is very helpful in college, because like college is where you find yourself a lot more. You're challenged in ways that you never felt before. So like having your friends know your schedule, or like know that you're like a visual learner, or you tend to like know like how you kind of work, and so that they really do help you to stay in check when, say, you having a stressful weekend and like you're not putting that time to have self-care for fun. So they're like, hey Casey, let's just go for ice cream today. It's just an hour, just like don't stress about it and stuff like that, like just having those like kind of reality checks to say, hey, all work and no play makes Jill a dull girl, like you have to have that balance. So definitely it does help out when you have those people around you to kind of let you know when you're acting a bit different, whether it's because you're focusing too hard on social life or you're focusing too hard on academics. Just having that kind of balance to help like keep like they help you keep that balance by keeping you in check, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we talk a lot about self-awareness a lot, just in terms of academics, and sometimes only relying on yourself for self-awareness is hard. You have so many things, especially at college, to be aware of, and it it would be a resource that was not being used, if you didn't take on that support system and you didn't tell your mom or your brother or your friend or your advisor, like, hey, I'm really having trouble with this. Do you think you can, kind of keep an eye on me with it or something like that? you'd be surprised how quickly people want to be there to support you, and how they have absolutely, I know with my mom, absolutely no problem calling you out if you're doing something a little too overboard. So yeah. So when is the best time to work? So we might not think about study schedules and, internal clocks as something with self-care, but it really does, in the sense that you have to know when you work best, and taking that time to reflect and think about maybe what would be the most optimal time for you is self-care. You're caring for your well-being and your ability to work at your highest, possibility or ability. So acknowledging that internal clock is important, figuring out if you're a morning person. I really love this. If you're an early bird, a night owl, or a mid-afternoon narwhal, it does not matter. It's not just the early bird or the night owl. I know I get a lot of stuff done in the midday because I'm fully awake. I definitely am not tired for the afternoon yet, but I'm ready to get the stuff done. As you can see, we're doing this workshop in the middle of the day. So sometimes, you can't take like, okay, what would work best for me right now, and just think of that on a present, idea. You can, but that might make it a little bit harder. So if you think back, maybe if you're a freshman, think back to high school, or if you're a junior, think back to freshman year, whatever it may be, and really think about when you worked best. Maybe in that time you didn't ever think about it, so you maybe can't think of any memories of when you were thinking about it. But if you reflect on what classes you did well, and maybe what times you were studying for those things, you might be able to get that idea. So determine when you work best and prioritize that time for your most important work. If you have a paper to write and you only have a certain amount of days to do it, but you also have, this project that you have a couple months to do, maybe write the paper during that most, prime time, and, still do the project. I'm not saying neglect it, but maybe do that, if you have time to relax, maybe brainstorm about the project, but make sure that the stuff that is really relevant in that moment, you prioritize for that perfect timing to work. So I'm wondering with you guys, and I know that it'll be a recording, so maybe me and Casey can reflect on this. What is your best time to study, and how did you know? Like I said, I study best midday, and I think I realized that when I thought that everybody works better in the morning. I tried getting myself to wake up, at 6:30 in the morning to start my work, and it just didn't go well. It went well maybe like the third day in and for a few days, but then once like the weekend hit, I was exhausted, and I was going to bed at around 9:30, which was so different for me. Usually I go to bed, around 11:30, 12. And so I think that was definitely a moment where I thought that what everybody else did would work for me. And that actually is something we'll talk about later. So I just kind of thought about the fact of, even without academics, when do I think that I'm, the best me throughout the day? Maybe when do I get the most productive, even if it's cleaning, or, figuring out a computer thing or a computer issue, or, making those business calls. When am I doing it? That's the best time. And it's always midday. So what about you, Casey?
I think my time changes. So I think it depends on the task. It depends on my environment. Because like I have moods. When you get in that mood that you're just in the work mood and you can work 5 hours straight, but then you have those moods that you can only do like 30 minutes, 30-minute bursts. So like I realized that like I used to in the past, I used to be a night person. Like I'd stay up really late. Then my dad would be like, come into the room to say goodnight to me, and he sees me falling asleep. He's like, Casey, if you're falling asleep, you're not achieving anything good. Just go to sleep. Like if you have a test tomorrow, right now you staying up does not, like you saying you studied 6 hours, but you really only studied two, it doesn't really matter. And then I think after he kind of like instilled that mindset into me, I was like, you know what, let me just study when I feel like I'm like okay with the material. So I think it depends on like how much material I have. And like if I have a quiet environment, if I'm back at home because of quarantine, I will work out. I mean, I'll work out or I'll study in the nighttime because I just want to have that time to zone in and not have distractions. But if I'm here by myself at school, I'll study in the morning sometimes, but most times I'm an afternoon 9 person. So it's between the afternoon like 12 and like maybe to 12 midnight. Sometimes maybe 1. But I'm a person that like prioritizes my sleep, so I work my schedule, my study schedule around my sleep schedule, and like make sure that I am getting everything like into my day. So like I think my time fluctuates. I'm not just a morning person or afternoon person or night person. It just changes based on the tasks.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely. And I will say, and maybe some people do well with, all-nighters, but through this like kind of through this reflection of time management and, what works best for me, I have successfully gone through undergraded, my master's, and part of the PhD without doing an all-nighter. So you can do it. You just have to manage your time and not wait until the last minute. I know there's a lot of people that could work under pressure. I am not one of those people. So if you are, by all means, do whatever works for you. But, as Casey kind of mentioned, you're not going to do as well as you could if you don't get that sleep. It's just biology. It's just going to work out that way. So definitely, balance how much you're studying with how much you're going out and how much sleep you need to get, and just make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. All right, so conducting regular mental health check-ins. I am not sure if anybody's ever done this, who's watching this, but I know regular mental health check-ins are very important to me. So some of the questions you might ask yourself are, have I been getting quality sleep with regular bedtimes and get up times? That's kind of what we just talked about. Maybe if you're in a harder time of the semester, maybe you're not getting that quality sleep, and maybe after doing this check-in, you can rework your schedule to make sure that you are. And sometimes we don't even realize it until after the fact. Haven't been isolating myself from others at work, family, or friends. Like we said before, having that support system is very important. So really make sure that you're not fully isolating yourself. It's okay if you are pulling away from those friends that maybe are distractions or aren't the best people for you to be around at the moment. That's fine, but definitely do not isolate yourself. Do I have more worries or anxiety than usual? And in that point, maybe use a scale of 1 to 10. The scale of 1 to 10 is easy because it's easier to track. You can maybe put on your phone if you're having a really hard time the week before exams, when you're really making sure you get that study time in. Maybe every week or every day of the week, just write down the number you think you're feeling so that you can track what days maybe you need more self-care, maybe when you need that extra sleep or that extra meal or that extra phone call home. Have I lost interest in activities and pursuits that usually held my attention? So this is a really important one for me. Anxiety and depression can come on, pretty quickly in college if you're not paying attention to it, and, not having that same excitement for things that you used to is a really big sign of that. So being aware of, what you're doing and how you're reacting to it is important. Obviously, during midterms, you might not want to go out, or you might not want to go out to dinner with your friends because you want to study. But there's a big difference between that and, usually wanting to go out and having the time to go out and just kind of staying at home and just feeling that anxiety of it. Those are two very different things. Have I felt more sad than happy recently? That kind of goes with that scale of 1 to 10. Just really check in with yourself and be honest, how are you doing recently? I know we often say like check in on your friends, but also check in on yourself. It's important, and you would be surprised how many things in your own body go on, without you noticing, maybe because you're preoccupied with other things. Do I feel at ease with myself and my surroundings? That definitely goes with all the anxiety that we were talking about. Do you feel that your life is appropriately balanced between work, fun, friends, family, self care, exercise, and other meaningful pursuits? When I think of this, I think of that meme that it's like if, when you're in college and you're trying to work out and you're trying to keep a social life and you're trying to, do well in school and you're trying to get sleep. And it's a lot. It's a lot of things to kind of keep up on. And so, it's completely understandable if sometimes certain levels are a little different than others. I know that there's times where maybe I'm not exercising as enough because I feel like I don't have time. Realistically, I could make the time, but I just don't feel like I have it. So just kind of checking in with yourself on that. Do you have trouble concentrating? This will be very much linked to your nutrition and your sleep. If you're having trouble concentrating, you might have a headache because you haven't been drinking enough water, or you might feel kind of like, stiff and stuck because you haven't walked around or gone outside that day. Just really, I think with the trouble concentrating, it's very simple solutions most of the time, especially if it's just, this one short time that you're having trouble concentrating. So just do what works for you in those moments. Have you been experiencing significant mood swings, crying, or thoughts of suicide? So this is definitely, one of the more serious ones. This is when, if you're feeling these types of things, even if it's not to the point of suicide yet, maybe seek help from even one of the academic success coaches. We can always give you the resource of maybe seeing a counselor with Henderson, or seeing, the Brief Therapy Institute, anything along those lines. We can always point you in the right direction for those resources. So definitely don't ever feel like you maybe aren't reaching out to the right person. There's always the person you're reaching out to, especially if it's somebody like us, will always be able to help you in one shape or form. So are you overly fatigued or tired at the end of the day? And how about at the end of the week? Just that kind of goes with the physical and emotional self-care, checking in with kind of, are you taking care of your nutrition, or your sleep, or your, exercise, kind of what we were talking about before? And has your appetite or eating habits changed in any way? I know that when I get stressed, I actually eat a lot more, but I know that there are people that will, accidentally miss a meal or two because they're so stressed, and that is very regular. I know many people who used to set kind of calendar reminders every day to make sure that they were eating if they were studying for the MCAT, or just having a really hard class for the semester. Just kind of keep in check with those things, because you don't want to go hungry, in the middle of a test, or, while you're studying. Just, normal nutritional factors to keep in mind. All right, so do you know what works for you? I know we've gone through a lot so far, a lot of things that you can do, a lot of ideas. But the realistic part of it is that not everything that everybody else does will work for you. You have to figure out what's kind of gonna give you that feeling that you're, at the top of your game and that you're taking care of yourself. So others may have self-care rituals or practices that may work for them and seem great and fun and perfect, but they might not work for you. I know I see people that are reading these books that they say they get, taken off into another world, and it's just so great. I cannot, I do not enjoy reading. I just can't. It makes me stressed. I feel like I'm not retaining anything. So that's kind of a good example of something where I kind of wish that that was my self-care thing, but it's just not. So I have to, maybe another idea of this self-care is, maybe just going to have a coffee, or, listening to some nice music. So examine what has worked for you in the past and try things out. And then you can meet with someone to discuss your personalized self-care plan. And that could be one of us as academic success coaches. It can be your academic advisor. It can be a therapist, whomever, you feel that you are comfortable reaching out to.
And I've since we were both academic success coaches, I've had a few students that have come to me saying that, oh, I need help with this, and I would, asked them like, hey, what do you typically do? Da 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 da. And they really had all the tools already to do what they wanted to achieve. But then just by speaking to somebody and like voicing like kind of like a therapy session, kind of just like expressing their feelings, because I don't know them most of the time, so they're able to speak to a stranger and like just voice how they're feeling. And I feel like that alone is enough of self-care or like a relief for them, because they're just like, oh wow, like, and then when I say, hey, you kind of already had the tools already, they're like, oh whoa, I didn't even notice, you know. So I feel like I've had two students that have come to me and they're like, hey, I have no idea what academic success coaching is. And I'm like, okay, well, let's get started. And then after that, they're like, oh wow, like I didn't expect this, but I feel so much better now. So like it really is just like a guide and like a self check-in by coming to us sometimes. And like you said, that this counts, like you coming to this session or you coming to or sessions one-on-one, it does help you and it works towards your self-care. So
Yeah, definitely. I think it's like an empowering thing when you feel like you need help from somebody else, and then that person shows you that, like you said, you really had the tools the whole time. And like Casey said, maybe even the first step of your self-care is seeing one of the academic coaches, or is watching some of the YouTube videos that we have. you know there's never a bad time to have that first star, and you don't need to hit every single thing on your first try. Just ease yourself in, don't overwhelm yourself. Obviously that would be the opposite of what we're trying to do if you overwhelmed yourself with your self-care. So now we're going to get into kind of like the different types of self-care. So simple self-care. Some ideas of simple self-care is to meditate, to exercise, to listen to a podcast or an audiobook, while you're making yourself that good meal that you love. Take a walk outside, get cozy and watch your favorite show or movie, write in your journal, or listen to music. And I think that this graphic is something that I know speaks to me, and I hope it speaks to some of you, that I think my phone battery is at 82% right now because I've already made sure that I charged it today. I made the conscious effort to make sure that my phone is charged. And, I have exercised today, so I have done, some self-care, but I'm sure that there's days where I pay more attention to caring for my phone than I do myself. So just really reflect on that, on those days where you feel like maybe you're letting your own needs go, and think about maybe how you are in terms of your charge. And you don't have to go see a therapist for an hour or two as your first step of self-care. It can, like we say on the list, be as easy as taking a 5-minute walk outside. So do we have anything else, Casey, to bring up for this?
A tip that I have heard and I've tried to use is like try to be gentle with yourself, like treat yourself as you would with a friend. If your friend's going through a tough week, you would just say, hey, like let's go get some ice cream, or let's hang out for a little bit, or to put the books aside 1 second. So treat yourself like you would a friend, like just because like you're a person just as much as your friend is a person. You have feelings, you can hurt your own feelings. So like definitely it's really important to like treat yourself and be gentle with yourself. My thing that I've realized that I started doing is like actually dedicating time to watching YouTube. So like we have, I'm from Jamaica and we have a bunch of upcoming small YouTubers, and they're like my age or like a little bit younger, a little bit older. And like I find so much joy in it because I'm not home and I'm able to like watch these videos of them back at home and all that stuff. So like that's something that I had to like fiddle around with, because people would say, oh yeah, I watch YouTube, but I couldn't relate to that. Then I found this niche and I was like, okay, wow, I actually really enjoy this. So I literally dedicate time saying, okay, I'll go study, but let me watch a YouTube video first. And then it's like 30 minutes long. Okay, I'll watch a 50-minute long one. So I still work it around my schedule, to make sure I'm getting my sleep and my scheduling. But I do prioritize, like, I know this gives me pleasure, so I'm going to dedicate time to watch this video. So that's something that definitely you want to check yourself and also be gentle with yourself.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example of your personalized self-care, that it's even self-care to have reflected on how you can make, this thing that you already like something that can give you that joy. So social self-care. So spending time with a friend in person or virtually, right now, doing homework in your favorite coffee shop, I mean, I know I haven't really been going to some coffee shops, so maybe even doing your homework outside in your backyard or in a, you know, a park with your favorite coffee or your favorite kind of snack. Have a long dinner with friends or with family, and you know, like we've said, that can be virtually. Host a board game night. Again, I actually have used the app. I think it's called House Party, where you actually can play, you know, board games online, and it's, you know, quick. You're not having to, you know, move pieces for anybody else. Keep an eye out for campus activities, and coming to this counts. You know, that's a very easy way. I know that we don't have any participants for this one, but it's fun, you know, to go to these events. I know I had one this past weekend that had to do with my department, and it was kind of like a business type meeting, but it was nice to see other people that aren't, you know, in my local, you know, ability to see them. It was nice to have those different kinds of conversation. And then, or, you know, join a new club. I'm not sure what clubs are online right now, but I'm sure it would be very easy to find one. And, you know, like I think the president has said, you know, hopefully we'll be able to come back onto campus soon. So just taking that time to figure out those social self-care ideas. And small self-care, kind of the same thing as the simple one, but you know, just even more ideas of, you know, taking a nap, maybe drinking more water, taking a long shower, accomplishing an errand. And then these last two really are things that are small, that are easy to do, like taking some deep breaths or doing some stretches. Those are two very good things, you know, to kind of get your blood moving without having to do a full-on exercise. You know, maybe you're not very much wanting to sweat in the moment, or, you know, really, you know, change your clothes or get your heart rate up too much, but taking those deep breaths and doing the stretches is just such a good and gentle thing to do for your body. And at least for me, it kind of makes me feel like I'm resetting a little bit. All right. So I'm wondering, and again, me and Casey can give some examples for this, what kind of self-care activities you all do. And I personally love Disney, and so this little graphic gives some great ideas of things that you can do that are maybe inspired by your favorite kinds of movies. So maybe talking to a friend, like in Monsters Inc., or, you know, finding a joy in the small things, dancing around, you know, reading a book, meditating. You know, there's a bunch of different things you can do, and um, you know, it would be a very easy first step to be like, oh, I actually really like The Incredibles. Maybe I'll do what, you know, they have listed for that. So some of the self-care things that I do are definitely drinking a lot of water. That's a very important thing for me. Sometimes if I'm, you know, maybe a little more frustrated or agitated than normal, I'll take my dog for a walk, or, you know, take a few deep breaths here and there. So Casey, what are some self-care things that you do?
I think my things change over like the week. I think I'm just a very fluctuating person.
Mhm.
But, like I'm always like singing or like humming a song in my head. That's something that I always do because like I enjoy singing. So I won't play music, but you always like if I'm doing something, I'll like probably be humming in my head or humming out loud. I watch the YouTube videos. I try to schedule my day so I'm not stressed. So I try to set aside time for my schoolwork. I do to-do lists, so I like do it on my phone, on my laptop, on sticky notes, and then just like take it off once I'm done. And I feel like that's a part of self care for me because I'm like dedicating time to avoid being stressed. So that's something that I do. I'll call my sister, call some friends sometimes too. Um, and also like meal prep because I know that meal prepping can help with like lessening stress, especially when you're at this point of the semester where you're just like tired and I'm about to graduate. So like I just it's a meal prep right now, but it really does help for the weeks to come when you're busy. You can just grab your food and get going, you know? So those are some small things that I do. And I sometimes will journal here and there. So those are some things that I do weekly.
Great. So definitely, you know, as you all are watching this, just maybe even write down a few self-care activities that you do that maybe you can even practice after you're done watching this video. Okay, so I know, like I've said, we don't have anybody here presently, so you can't ask a question right now, but, always feel free to make an appointment with one of us. You can always ask questions, maybe commenting on our Instagram, or, you know, a lot of our YouTube videos have great answers to questions, too. So, feel free to reach out to all the resources that we offer. We're always here to answer your questions. So I think that is it. And so, like we've said before in our workshops, this obviously you will know since you'll be watching it on the YouTube, but just like the other workshops, this will be on our YouTube. And maybe after this workshop, if you, wanted to specifically go over self-care, feel free to make an appointment. And I know that there is a video on making appointments on our YouTube. So feel free to reference that. So we will see you soon, and hopefully you can make an appointment with us.